the accidental Googler. I'm a failed opera singer by training. I spent 10 years at Apple.
What's gone in behind the scenes on Google Maps?
We've actually recently turned on accessibility, visibility by default. Our mission statement is to make the world's information universally accessible and useful. And if we're not going to do that for 16% of the world, we're really not doing what we set ourselves out to do. You're going to screw it up, but how you react once you screw it up is really up to you. And that's the difference between a failure and success.
Chris, thank you for joining us on the Purple Coat podcast.
My pleasure.
We finally get to meet in person after all this time, eh?
It's been a couple of years we've been trying to make this. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. And I think for everyone watching and listening, it'd be lovely to hear a bit about you and your job at Google, and yeah, just whatever you care to share.
Yeah, so my title is I'm the head of accessibility and disability inclusion for Google for EMEA, so Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And what this means, my job is to try to understand the needs of people with disabilities across the region. So from Helsinki to Johannesburg, from Riyadh to Dublin, because it's going to be different from place to place. The constraints are different, the needs are different, the languages are different, and it all matters when it comes to building technology that can hopefully make people's lives better.
Yeah, as we're going to get into those different variables, it's so interesting at what makes disability inclusion such a cool topic, because there's so many elements to play with and understand, and that creates opportunities and different solutions as well. So it'd be good to go back a little bit in the past. Obviously, we know where you are now at Google, but I guess tell us a bit around how you got into tech, how you got into disability, a bit about kind of studies and career. That'd be really
Yes. So I'm not the accidental Googler. I really shouldn't be here. I'm a failed opera singer by training.
Wow.
True story. I wanted to be an opera singer, but in my mid-20s, I realized I was making a lot more money waiting on tables than I was singing, and realized it probably meant something.
Can we get you to sing on the podcast today?
Not enough alcohol in the world. So in my mid-20s, I had this realization that I wasn't going to make it as a singer, but I was born and raised in Silicon Valley. So within a couple of years, I found myself at Apple, and I spent 10 years at Apple. I worked on the first iPod, the first iTunes, the G4 Towers, G5 Towers, Final Cut Studio. Then I spent a couple of years at Sony Ericsson making phones, and then a year at Disney making games, and I've been here at Google for over 11 years now. But it was here at Google where I learned about accessibility.
Okay.
I was the lead technical program manager for Google Play Music. And we had a test engineer come into one of our meetings, and she turned on voiceover, and I heard button, 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 button. I asked, what's that? And she said, well, this is Google Play Music for someone who's blind. I said, well, that's stupid. How do they use it? She said, they can't. That's why I'm here. So that was my introduction. I never thought of it. 18 years into my second career, it was never a factor.
I do think that is an interesting one, isn't it? Like, because it obviously isn't just you. Most people in tech in sort of, 10, certainly 20 years ago, were just not aware of the needs and wants of disabled consumers. Like, why do you think that was, and what do you think has enabled that to become more understood now?
That's a really good question. I don't have a good answer, but I have my answer. My answer is that there weren't enough people talking about it to raise it into consciousness.
Just conversations.
Yeah. When I looked around, there was the occasional person who was blind. I had no idea how much that they suffered in the work. There's the occasional person who was deaf, but I didn't know sign language. I was so unaware, I didn't even know how to start. So much so, I probably didn't even recognize the disabilities that were right in front of me because I had no context to it.
Yeah.
But once I had it exposed to me, within a couple of months, I volunteered to take on accessibility for the Google Play suite of products, did a dalliance in VR. And then about 7 years ago, I joined the central team. And my first job was to make all of Google's products accessible. And then after about 5 years of that, I got kind of bored. And it was the middle of COVID, and I realized I wanted to change, but I didn't want to leave Google, and I didn't want to leave accessibility. And I just read about the European Accessibility Act. And I thought, that's kind of cool. We should do something about that. So I pitched my job to my boss, and she said yes, her boss said yes, her boss said yes. And I moved here 2 years ago in July.
Okay, so the Silicon Valley pitching kind of way helped in terms of the internal, here's a job that would change the world, and you want to be the person to drive that.
You make it sound so much cooler than it really was. I like your version.
And so I guess looking at the tech that we've had evolving, I mean, there's been so many big evolutions, like you mentioned, sort of mobile. I mean, even just social media, apps, all of this stuff. How much of that has been a focus around making those things accessible, but also how many of those things with a tweak have directly empowered people to overcome separate barriers? Can you see a sort of percentage, like is it 50-50? Is there more of a leaning into getting the products accessible before they become empowering for people?
It's a little bit of everything. When you have something new, you do it right. You bring the community in to understand the opportunities, you understand what's broken, you understand the interactions that can be really helpful. Yeah. But more often than not, you have a bunch of software that's already been developed that could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years old. And that's going to take some time to be able to get it to be fixed. So in most companies, you have a little bit of both. The new stuff does it right. The older stuff, the harder stuff, the scarier stuff. This is one that will take a little bit longer. But with the right intention and with the right planning and the right collaboration with the community, you can understand those touch points where it's most impactful, where you can make those changes that can really have the difference between getting a job and not getting a job because it's accessible or it's not accessible.
Yeah, that makes sense. As I'm looking at the Google, ecosystem, for want of a better word, like with the products, for you, I mean, I know some said to ask you what's your favorite, because I imagine it's a bit like choosing a favorite child, but like of all the stuff you've worked on, which has been the most positive, exciting product for you?
It is sort of like choosing amongst my children. So let me choose one of my oldest children. So I think I really got it, the real impact of it with Live Transcribe.
Okay.
Handful of years ago, I remember we were in Israel and we were showing it off to the team for the first time, and we were partnering with Access Israel, and we showed them something in Hebrew, and they were stunned that it could transcribe it. It could actually understand Hebrew and write Hebrew, and they said this is life changing, and I thought, oh yeah, it's really cool. I didn't get it until then. So for that emotional connection, I think it's probably Live Transcribe. There's a newer one that I really like an awful lot. It's called Look to Speak. And this is one that uses a little computer vision AI on the front of your camera, and you look from side to side and you bisect 2 lists of words. And you choose what these words are. So there's no magic in terms of the list. So you can put in swear words if you want. And I've tried and it works. But you put the 2 lists of words there and you look from side to side and you bisect each of these lists, and allows someone who is quite profoundly disabled to actually be able to say what they want because they chose it.
Yeah, I love that. Empowering people to swear, that feels like inclusion and equality.
It's reality.
I agree totally.
Do you see the thing that just came out recently, like I think like yesterday or today, about Mortal Kombat 1? So there's a new version of Mortal Kombat coming out. And I don't know if you ever watched the game, they have this thing called a fatality, and trigger warning for anyone watching this, it's a little grotesque. But they have this thing called fatality, where you do something really, they kill someone in a very spectacular way. They have audio description of these fatalities. It's hilarious and really, really cool, because now it's someone who can participate completely.
Yeah. I think what you're speaking to there is it's become possible to get creative with accessibility. I know there's something we saw at Purple Great the other day that someone had used alt text, but they'd made it funny and comical, like almost a side joke within the description of the image, but they made that fun and creative. So it kind of speaks to your example there with Mortal Kombat as well.
Well, I think people think it's too scary. If we're to do this right, it has to be fun. Yeah. We want to be in on the in joke, and we get to make the in joke. Yeah. And I think when you do that, other people want to participate. If you make it about compliance, no one's really going to care. Yeah, but if you make it about cracking jokes behind the scenes, people want to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. One thing I wanted to talk to you about was maps. So I know being a wheelchair user, physical environment, information on is, very important. And there's been so much improvement over the last 10 years about that. What's gone in behind the scenes on Google Maps to some degree around provision of access information? It doesn't have to just be for wheelchair user, but broadly the accessibility information. And is there more to come in terms of how it can untap more of that potential to support disabled people?
I think the answer is yes, yes, and yes. But there's a lot of nuance towards it. Yeah. So in the past couple of years, we've really leaned in towards making maps have a lot more information relevant to the physical parts of infrastructure that make things accessible, whether it's a ramp or a hearing loop, for example. but we know this is just the beginning. So we want to expand these attributes of places. So today we can tell you if there's an accessible bathroom, if there's a way, an accessible way to get into it, and that's really cool. But there's some nuance to it. For example, some people say, "Listen, I can go up one step. Don't make me go 20 minutes around because there's one step."
Accessibility is different from yours.
Exactly. So there's a lot of nuance that we want to start to try to understand and expose in a thoughtful, intuitive way. So we can tell you if there's a bathroom or not, but we can't tell you how easy it is to get into the place. Or we can tell you if it's one step or no steps. Yeah. Because right now, that's really what we've been asking for. So these are the kind of things that's interesting and there. Another thing that I'm proud of, though, is we've actually recently turned on accessibility visibility by default in Google Maps. So we had it on here in the UK for a while, but we've actually worldwide turned it on. So if you see a little wheelchair icon on the card for the POI for the building, there's information there, and you don't have to go into the accessibility settings and turn it on and hope you're in a country where it works. It's just there. And the data's going to get better and better over time.
Yeah. I mean, one thing to me is the images or even videos are amazing because I know my access needs. So if I can see the bathroom, for example, I can make that judgment call. So is there stuff around imaging and around video? And I'm also wondering about AI as a broader point, like how that may or may not be able to make a difference here.
So there are videos capable today. People can upload a video of their space however they want. You can install these sort of three-dimensional panoramas and you can explore a space. The infrastructure is there. It's just up to building owners and shop owners to include it as part of what they want to include.
It's that human adoption part, isn't it?
Yeah. And in terms of AI, there's actually some new stuff happening in the past couple of years where we actually can do sort of animated three-dimensional recreations and look through. So you can actually see it reconstructed through some AI and some computer magic.
Yeah, love that. So tell us a bit more where we are today, this beautiful room that we're in, and you've been showing me around today. It'd be great to share a bit more about this area.
So we're in the middle of Google's engineering office in London. We call it 6PS. It's right across the street from the St. Pancras the train station, right next to King's Cross tube station. So it's as easy to get to as almost anything is in London, really. And on the 7th floor of this engineering building, we have about 1,500 square feet dedicated to accessibility and disability inclusion. And we call it the Accessibility Discovery Center. We launched in December of last year as a part of IDPD, International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And as of today, we've had over 1,200 people from outside of Google come through for tours because they want to understand, why does Google care? Why should they care? What can we do? What's interesting? What's meaningful? And it's been a career highlight for me in ways I never expected.
And what of those things you just said, what you share with the 1,200 people, what's the sort of summary for you in terms of why Google cares, why you're doing the work here?
To put on the official Google hat, I mean, our mission statement is to make the world's information universally accessible and useful. And if we're not going to do that for 16% of the world, we're really not doing what we set ourselves out to do. And even our CEO Sundar says if there's one person left behind, we're not done. So from a high level, our management gives us permission to do this, and we have the expectation that we make our products accessible. A well thought out accessible product, when you're not focused on compliance, it can be a delight to use regardless of who you are, and it's usable, period, for people with disabilities, hopefully delightfully usable. But when you have this thing that's a delight to use for everyone, they're going to want to use it. Yeah. If we have Gmail and it's a beautiful application and it works really intuitively, whether you have a disability or not, you're going to want to use it. And we understand that. And when we do our job right, we do it really well. And we're never perfect. Our products aren't perfect, but we try, and we're learning, and we're continuing to study. Like the space we have here, I mean, half of the ADC is dedicated to research, because we know there's things we need to do better. And we have new products that we want to build, and we want to make sure that they're accessible, whether it's a bespoke product for people with disabilities like Lookout. There's some really excellent tools, but you have to design with the community or else you're not going to solve the problem. But we also want to make sure that our general products like Android works really, really well. And here at the ADC, we've done research on both of these bespoke products and mainstream products making sure that we are making it as accessible as we can.
And also there's been historically across tech that correlation of things that have been created for disabled people have very often become very useful and valuable for non-disabled people. So that's like, yeah. So that's the kind of the amazing part of where that all can join up as well. We were talking earlier about nothing about us without us. So you've sort of spoken to that through our chat so far, but it'd be great to hear a bit more about how you're engaging the community to bring those insights into the work that you do.
Of course. So the ADC itself was actually started by our ERG, our employee resource group called the Disability Alliance. They said we want to have a space for an ADC. This is actually the third one we have at Google, but this is the first one outside of the US, and it's the first one that's externally available. The other two are internally focused only. So even before I got here, the DA said, hey, we should do this. And then when I arrived, we had the space here. Through Googlers with Disabilities, we did the first pass of design of the space. And then as we were building it, then we also partnered, say, with RNID and RNIB to understand, so we could build a locally relevant connection to the work. As I was mentioning earlier, when we brought in the RNID here, I was so excited about all the caption stuff and the lights and those whiz-bangy things. They asked me, well, what are you doing about sign language? I was like, oh gosh, I forgot about sign language because there's no tech here. So what should we do? And they brought us some lovely posters that talk about finger spelling and etiquette. And now that allows us to that made the space much more realistic and much more useful to everybody. And it happened because of the connection with the community.
That's amazing. And I guess like being looking forward, so we've got the spaces here, all this amazing background of different synchronicities and dots joining both for you, for Google, for the community. What are the big problems you're looking to go after in the future, or what possibilities are exciting you at the moment?
So everyone right now is talking about AI. And
everyone heard of that, so tell me more.
It's a new kind of pizza. It's really quite tasty. Google has been doing AI for a very long time, specifically AI and accessibility.
Yeah.
You go back to 2009, and that's when we had our first example of captions, automated captions in YouTube in English. So now we are 2023, a decade plus later, and now we have 14 different languages. And that's using old style machine learning. This new generative AI, these new large language models can be really, really powerful. But to do that, we need to partner with the community. We need to make sure that we design these models in a way that are ethical. That take into account age, gender, race, ability. All these things have to be part of it at the core. And we've been working to do that as best as we can. So what I'm really excited is to see is something like the Lookout application. At GAD a couple months ago, we actually announced a new feature that we're adding into it, where someone who uses the application can send us a picture from their role, and we'll provide a Gen AI, but it provides a really thoughtful human-style alt-text description of the picture. And then you can ask questions like, are there birds in the sky? What color is the horse? And it'll answer these kind of questions for you. Yeah. So thoughtfully designed AI can be really powerful and impactful in people's lives, but it has to be done in conjunction with the communities.
Yeah, so it's sort of all of the barriers that disabled people face. AI can significantly impact positively and empower.
In a digital context, yes. It's not going to build ramps automatically and stuff like that, but it is a really powerful building block, and we're just scratching the surface into the ways where it can be really meaningful.
So you showed me a little bit earlier some of the adaptive gaming, so moving more to hardware. I imagine from that research perspective we've touched on, from that AI potential perspective as well. But yeah, what kind of hardwares could be coming in the future, or things that you're working on, or just things you want to share really today?
Well, I guess from a hardware perspective, one of the coolest things that that's recently been announced is from L'Oreal. It's I think they're called Hapta, and it's a makeup applicator designed for people with essential tremors, leveraging technology from Verily, and it allows someone, regardless of who you are, to do your own makeup. And for me, that autonomy that these technologies can provide is really the critical part about accessibility when well done. There's a ramp to getting into a building. I can go in by myself. I can do my own makeup. I can take my own selfie. I can feed myself. All of these things matter, and they can all be enhanced with some thoughtful AI once we understand what the problem is, and then collaborate together what the solutions are.
So there's going to be multiple problems and challenges, but then multiple products and different solutions coming from that as well.
Because people are complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking, I guess, even further to the future, like, is there an end game? What does a fully inclusive world look like? When do we all feel that the job's been done and we can tick that success box in your eyes?
Oh, not in my lifetime. but because everyone's different. I mean, everyone's needs are going to be different. Yours and Don's needs are different.
Yeah.
Mine and my brother's needs are different. So there's no such thing as a perfectly accessible society or world, because there's always something that's going to happen.
And there'll always be businesses for consumers for the same reason, right?
Yeah. So there's always opportunities to make things better.
Yeah.
So in my mind, there's no such thing as a perfectly accessible world. But that doesn't mean we can't build tools that will help us get there. So we were just talking about hardware, and we've just talked about AI. And for me, this concept of augmented reality, sort of like head-worn augmented reality. I mean, Apple just recently announced their Vision Pro, which is a really neat step into that direction. But for me, that is the future for many people with disabilities. So say, for example, if you have a couple of cameras on your face, and we know where you are from a world perspective, say, think like Google Maps.
Yeah.
Now we can provide you a really, really good description of exact what's happening around you. We can read the signs. If you'd let us, we can even tell you if someone you know is walking down the street. There's a lot of privacy concerns and that kind of stuff. But the technology exists, but no one's really sort of figured out how to do that in a thoughtful way. Yeah. But the whole idea of augmented reality supplemented with AI it can be a really powerful future. Virtual reality is a thing today. Meta is doing a bunch of really interesting things. They've just announced captions in their virtual world. So for me, VR is the great training ground for AR when it comes to accessibility.
Yeah.
So picture you're blind and you drop to the middle of a virtual world. You can't see what's around you, but we have this called a screen reader, and like on web pages and applications, there should be sort of like a world reader that can describe the world around us. Yeah. So they would either do it sort of passively, and you say, "Okay, G, what's around me?" And then the Google AI would describe the things that are important around you. Or you could have sort of like flashlight mode, like what's that? The heuristics in terms of learning what is important and what's not important and how to describe things is really important learning for the future of AR. So you take away the virtual world, and now I'm in the real world, and what's that? Tell me what's happening around the world around me. So VR is a really neat stepping ground and learning space for AR that allows us to describe the world for people particularly with vision and hearing impairments. That's cool.
That is very cool. And my brain's firing off, like, from my personal perspective. I've got dexterity difficulties, so I use my mobile for everything, and I use the phone to interact with a laptop if I need the laptop. But the thought of having, like, say glasses or something for the visual and then being able to speak, that means I don't have to struggle as much with my hands. And even to the point earlier about where is an accessible bathroom. So I could imagine that future of being in London.
Where's the closest bathroom?
Where I'm not struggling to look at my phone while I'm driving the wheelchair. It's like, that all resonates a lot. I mean, you intimated there's going to be some, human nature concerns about evolution of technology, particularly privacy. How much is that a barrier or a threat to these things being realized?
That's an interesting question, because different countries have different expectations of privacy requirements. And coming here into Europe, this has become really clear to me. For example, in Germany, they're much more concerned about privacy than say they are in the US. But regardless, you need to make sure that any experience that's created is meaningful and worthwhile without extra information that could be privacy concerned. But if you allow a little more access to the top 10 people I would want to know that is around me, you could constrain it in an interesting way, and then we could tell you when your brother or your cousin or your mom is there. There are ways to make these technologies more useful if you're willing to share more information, but it has to be done in a way that is completely consensual. You have to be clear. They have to be clear. There's a lot of things that need to be solved that doesn't exist today. But when we solve it, we can really make people's lives better.
So moving our chat to a close.
Yeah.
I guess just looking for those maybe more specific examples, is there one or two problems in the near to medium future that you're really specifically excited to tackle?
I think two, probably. One is the expansion of these ADC centers. Something I'm really excited about is we're having conversations inside about building more of these around Europe. And this allows us to have that nothing about us conversation in different countries where you can really get deeper and understand the needs and the expectations and share the tools that exist. One of the biggest problems that we have in accessibility, regardless if it's us or Apple or Microsoft, is awareness of the tools that exist today and the features that exist inside those tools. So the centers like this really help teach individuals, the charities that support them, universities, businesses, about these kinds of tools. So one of the things that I'm really focused on us doing is trying to solve that awareness problem. One of the answers is through ADCs, more ADCs around the world. I can't make any announcements now, but I'm really hopeful that that in the next year you will see at least one or two more of these in across Europe. And through these ADCs and through other initiatives that we're doing, like newsletters and quarterly videos, we can sort of raise the awareness of the tools that help people today. So then people will be helped, but then we get to learn how to make it better. So by having a place like the ADC or our disability support lines, we can learn about how to make the products better, so we can even take it to that next level of support.
It's kind of a circle, isn't it? It's that input, iteration, like you say, not being scared to break things or to have those learning moments, inverted commas, to keep that improvement, and over time we all get to where we want to go.
It's like the sign I was showing you. You have to be willing to make something accessible. You have to try it, and you're going to screw it up. Yep. But how you react once you screw it up is really up to you. And that's the difference between a failure and success. If you're willing to fix it and try again, you're going to be successful. If you have a culture that doesn't allow you to make a mistake, you're not going to push the boundaries, and you're really not going to be able to do that which we're trying to do here, which is make a more inclusive world.
I totally agree. Chris, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.